The pillow came down hard and fast. No warning, no hesitation, pressed over the old man's face with 2 hands and 200 pounds of dead weight behind it. The man doing it wasn't angry. That was the worst part. His face was blank. Bored, almost. Like smothering a federal witness in a hospital bed was just another item on a checklist. The machines screamed. The body underneath convulsed. His fingers tightened. 15 more seconds and Torrin Gage would be gone forever. Erased quietly in a building full of people paid to save lives. And not one soul on that floor had any idea it was happening. If you're new here, subscribe and follow this story to the very end. And drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Nobody remembered Vala Rice. That was the thing about her. She moved through Sovereign Heights Medical Center the way background noise moves through a crowded room. Present, constant, completely unremarkable. She clocked in at 10:45 every night, tied her hair back with the same elastic band, pulled on the same slightly too big scrubs, and began her rounds without fanfare and without complaint. She didn't gossip at the nurse's station. She didn't steal anyone's lunch from the break room fridge. She didn't ask for overtime, didn't complain about short-staffed nights, didn't linger in the medication room scrolling her phone the way half the staff did when they thought no one was watching. She was, by every measurable standard, the most forgettable person in a building full of people trained to notice details. The night charge nurse, a barrel-chested woman named Darla, who had been running night shifts at Sovereign Heights for 19 years, once said to one of the orderlies, "That Rice girl, she's either the most dedicated rookie I've ever seen, or there's something off about her and I can't put my finger on it." The orderly had shrugged. "She's just quiet, Darla." "Quiet," Darla had repeated, and the words sat in her mouth like something she wasn't sure she wanted to swallow. That was 3 weeks before the storm. The night it happened, a Thursday in late October, when the rain came down on Philadelphia in thick, angry sheets, and the wind rattled every loose panel on the hospital's aging facade, Vala arrived 4 minutes early. She always did. She signed in, took her assignment sheet from the rack, and scanned it with the practiced efficiency of someone reading a tactical brief. 12 patients on the 7th floor, 2 post-surgical, 1 on oxygen monitoring, the rest stable, including one particularly notable name in room 804, Torrin Gage, listed simply as a John Doe in the public-facing system, but flagged internally with a yellow security notation that most of the nursing staff had stopped questioning 2 weeks ago. Vala had not stopped questioning it. She had in fact spent those 2 weeks watching room 804 the way a hawk watches a field. Not constantly, not obviously, but with a quality of attention that never fully switched off. She had noticed the federal marshal posted at the end of the hall, rotating every 12 hours. She had noticed the extra camera feed that had been wired in above the door. She had noticed the way the attending physician, Dr. Emmett Hale, always closed the door fully when he spoke to the man inside, even though every other patient room on the floor had the curtain drawn and the door left open per standard protocol. Torrin Gage was not just a patient. She didn't know his story, not the full picture, but she knew enough. She had heard the name in whispered fragments. A federal witness, a man who had been shot 3 times in a parking garage in Camden 2 weeks ago and had survived by what his chart politely described as unlikely physiological resilience. What the chart did not say, what no document in that hospital said openly, was that Torrin Gage was the key witness in a case that was going to trial in 11 days. A case that involved people with enough money and enough reach to make a man disappear from inside a protected hospital room on a stormy Thursday night. Vala knew all of this not because she was clever or well-connected. She knew it because she had been in rooms exactly like that one. She had sat in that bed before, metaphorically speaking. She tied her hair back, pocketed her penlight, and started her rounds. At 11:15, the 2 men came through the service entrance on the east side of the building. Vala was in room 712, adjusting a drip line for a patient named Mr. Kowalski, who insisted on talking through every single procedure, regardless of how minor it was, when she felt it. Not a sound, not a sight. Something older than either of those, the particular prickle at the base of her neck that years of operational work had carved into her nervous system like a groove in a record. The feeling that something in the environment had changed and her conscious mind had not yet caught up to what her body already knew. She finished with Mr. Kowalski's line, said goodnight, stepped into the hallway. The two men were at the far end of the corridor, near the supply closet, wearing yellow safety vests and carrying a toolbox between them. Nothing inherently unusual about that. Maintenance worked night shifts regularly. But Vala's eyes did not take in the vests or the toolbox as proof of normalcy. Her eyes went to the hands, the posture, the way the taller of the two moved with a kind of weight distribution that did not come from a lifetime of fixing pipes and changing bulbs. That was the walk of someone who had trained, not in a gym, in the field. She did not stop walking. She did not look at them a second longer than a passing nurse would look at any maintenance worker. She turned left at the nurse's station, picked up a clipboard she did not need, and positioned herself at the counter with her back to the window and her face angled toward the reflection in the glass of the cabinet across the hall. She watched them. The shorter one, stocky, thick through the shoulders, moving with deliberate quiet, drifted toward the electrical panel near the stairwell door. The taller one kept the toolbox and kept walking, heading in the direction of room 804. Vala's jaw tightened. She set the clipboard down. "Hey!" Darla appeared behind her, coffee mug in hand, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. "You do the check on 804 already? Marshall out there says the patient's been restless." "Going now," Vala said. Darla frowned. "You all right? You look—" "I'm fine," Vala said. "Going now." She moved down the hall with the same unhurried, purposeful pace she always used, the kind that didn't draw attention, didn't invite questions, didn't read as urgency to anyone who wasn't already looking for it. The federal marshal, a young guy, couldn't have been more than 28, sitting in a folding chair with his jacket open and his eyes on his phone, glanced up as she approached. "Nurse coming in for a check," she said. He nodded, looked back at his phone. She pushed the door to room 804 open quietly, stepped inside, and let it close behind her. Torrin Gage was awake. He was thin, older than she had expected from the chart, with gray in his beard and a network of healing bruises across one side of his face. 3 drainage tubes, a central line, both wrists faintly marked by what looked like old restraint burns. Nothing medical, nothing recent. He turned his head when she entered and looked at her with eyes that were sharp in a way that his body, broken and propped up by machinery, was not. "Nurse," he said. His voice was dry, papery. "Mr. Gage," she said quietly. She did not move toward his bed. She moved to the window, facing the door, watching the glass, and spoke without turning around. "I need you to listen to me, and I need you not to make noise." A pause. "There are 2 men on this floor," she said. "They are not maintenance. One of them is heading for this room, and one of them is at the electrical panel. When the power goes out, and it will go out, do not move, do not call out, do not touch any of your lines. Do you understand me?" Silence. Then, "Who are you?" "Your nurse," she said. Another pause, longer this time. "You're not just a nurse," Torrin Gage said. She didn't answer that. The lights went out. Not a flicker, not a gradual dimming. All at once, the overhead fluorescence, the equipment displays, the glow from the hallway beyond the door. Everything dropped into the heavy, disorienting dark of a building that had just lost its main power feed, leaving only the thin emergency backup lighting to throw long orange shadows across the walls. Down the hall, someone screamed. A patient, not staff, high and brief, and then swallowed by silence. Vala was already moving. She crossed to the door in 2 steps, opened it a crack, and looked out. The marshal was on his feet, hand on his holster, turning to look toward the electrical panel. He was looking the wrong direction. She could see the shape of the taller maintenance worker moving toward the far end of the hallway, not toward room 804, not yet, but moving with purpose, moving fast. Marshall. She kept her voice low and flat. Get inside this room and lock the door. The young marshal turned and looked at her. Ma'am, lock the door, she said again, and something in the way she said it made him step back, made him look at her, really look at her, for the first time. Something in her face, in that orange half-light, was not the face of a nurse checking a drip line. It was something older and quieter and harder than that, and whatever he saw there made him step through the door without argument. She locked it from the outside. Then she went to find the shorter one. He was still at the electrical panel, working quickly and without a flashlight, which told her he had mapped the panel in advance, had done his reconnaissance, knew exactly which breakers to pull and in what order. That told her this was not improvised. This was planned to the minute. She turned the corner into the alcove before he heard her. 3 steps, fast and light, and she had his arm behind his back and his face against the wall before he finished turning around. Don't, she said. He was trained. She felt it immediately in the way his body responded, not with the panic of an untrained person, but with the coiled resistance of someone who had been in this position before and knew the options. He tried to torque his weight to the right. She redirected it. He drove his elbow back. She absorbed it, adjusted her grip, and applied precisely the right amount of upward pressure to the shoulder joint to make further movement a choice between compliance and a torn rotator cuff. He went still. How many? She said. Nothing. She increased the pressure. A sharp exhale through his teeth. 3. Where's the third? Nothing again. Floor, she said, and he was on the floor, unconscious, before the sentence finished. She hadn't hurt him badly. A pressure point application, clean and controlled, but he would be out long enough to matter. She searched him. No gun. A phone with a locked screen. A laminated badge she pulled from his vest and pocketed, and a secondary device, small, gray, the size of a pack of gum, that she recognized immediately as a signal jammer. She took that too and crushed it under her heel. In the hallway, a voice, male, controlled, the voice of someone used to giving orders, called out from the far end of the ward. Time check. He was waiting for a response from the man she had just put on the floor. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then, confirm position. Vala was already moving. She pulled a fire extinguisher from the wall bracket outside the supply room. The big, red industrial kind, 12 pounds of pressurized CO2, and moved toward the sound of the voice. The second man had reached the nurse's station. He had the station's phone pulled from the wall, cutting communications the old-fashioned way, backup measure in case the jammer wasn't enough. He was facing away from her when she came around the corner, and he turned fast, faster than she expected, swinging the phone receiver like a weapon. She ducked under it. The extinguisher came up, and the bottom of the canister connected with his forearm with the flat crack of metal on bone, and he dropped the receiver with a grunt that was short and hard and involuntary. She swung again, controlled, targeted, and the canister caught him across the temple, and he went down hard, knocking over the medication cart beside the station in a crash of plastic and scattered packets that rang through the darkened ward like a gunshot. Darla appeared at the far end of the corridor. Vala, what in God's name? Get everyone in their rooms, Vala said, not shouting, not panicking, her voice carrying across the ward the way a voice carries when it has been trained to carry. Every room, close the doors, don't open them. Now, Darla, right now. Darla stared at her. Now. The word landed with a weight that moved Darla's feet before her brain fully processed the instruction. She began moving, knocking on doors, speaking in low, urgent tones, and Vala turned back toward the far end of the ward. 3. That's what the first one had said. 3. She had the first on the floor in the electrical alcove. She had the second at the nurse's station. The third was somewhere in this building, and she had not seen him yet, which meant he had gone a different way, which meant he knew the layout, which meant he was already close to room 804. She ran, not jogged, ran, full sprint, scrubs and all, the extinguisher abandoned, her feet hitting the linoleum in the near dark with a rhythm she had not used in over 2 years. The door to room 804 was still locked from the outside. She could see the handle. She reached it, pressed her ear to the door. Silence from inside. Then a voice, low, measured, with the particular cadence of someone who has rehearsed what they are saying. "Mr. Gage, don't make this harder than it needs to be." The lock. She had the key card. She swiped it, pushed through the door. The third man was at Torrin Gage's bedside. He was tall, taller than the others, lean in the way of someone who runs long distances, with close-cropped gray hair and the kind of face that had been arranged by long experience into an expression of permanent, unreadable calm. His right hand held a syringe. His left hand held Torrin Gage's arm. He looked up when the door opened, and he looked at Vala, not with surprise, but with the quiet recalibration of someone who has encountered an unexpected variable and is deciding in real time what it means. "Nurse," he said. "Put it down," she said. He did not put it down. He tilted his head very slightly. "You took out my people." "Put it down," she said again. "Who are you?" The calm in his voice was not the calm of someone who was not afraid. It was the calm of someone who had decided that fear was not a useful variable in this equation. Someone who will put you on the floor in about 4 seconds if you don't set that syringe on the table. A beat. 2 beats. He set the syringe on the bedside table. Then he came at her. He was good. She would give him that. He came with the economic, efficient movement of someone who had been in close quarters combat more than once and had come out the right side of it each time. His first move was a feint, a hand toward her face that was designed to draw her guard up, and his real move was a low tackle at her midsection. She had anticipated the feint. She had not been able to fully anticipate the speed. She caught most of the tackle, used his forward momentum to redirect him into the wall, but he took her with him, and they both hit the wall hard enough to rattle the blood pressure monitor off its stand. Torrin Gage said something sharp and short that might have been a warning or might have been a curse. The man recovered faster than she expected. His elbow found her ribs, not her face, not a dramatic blow, just a targeted, precise impact to the intercostal muscles that sent a spike of breathless pain through her side and bought him room to get upright. She gave him 2 seconds. He used them to reach for something at his belt. She did not give him a 3rd second. She moved inside his reach before the weapon cleared, controlled the arm, applied the lock, and used the wall behind her and the downward drive of her entire body weight to bring him to the floor in a movement that was too fast and too deliberate and too utterly unlike anything a rookie nurse on a hospital floor should know how to do. He was still conscious. He lay on the floor face down, one arm trapped at an angle that kept him from rising. His breathing was controlled, even now. "Federal witness protection," he said, his face against the linoleum. "That man is dead either way. You understand that? You bought him a week, maybe 2. They'll send someone else." "Then I'll deal with someone else," Vala said. "Who are you?" She looked down at him. "Tonight, I'm the night nurse." She secured him with a tubing from a supply drawer, thick, reinforced, the kind used to tie off IV ports, and she looped it twice and pulled it with a kind of mechanical certainty that told you it was not coming loose. And then she straightened up and looked at Torrin Gage. He was watching her from the bed with those sharp, clear eyes. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Outside, somewhere down the hall, she could hear Darla's voice, frightened, insistent, and the distant sound of someone calling 911 on a personal cell phone since the station lines were dead. Below them, in the building somewhere, she could hear movement, footsteps, multiple sets, coordinated moving up. 3 had been the count from the first man, but the first man had been lying, or he hadn't known the full count. Either way, it was not over. Torn Gage looked at the door, then at Vala. "How many more?" he said. Vala crossed to the window, looked out at the storm, the rain hammering the glass, the distant glow of the city below, the dark gap between this floor and the roof, 3 stories above. "I don't know," she said. "What do we do?" She turned from the window. She looked at the wheelchair folded against the wall. She looked at the door. She looked at the man on the floor and then at the man in the bed. "Can you move?" she said. Torn Gage's jaw set. He looked at his tubes, his lines, his machines. He looked at the doorway. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone when he is measuring the difference between trust and survival, and trying to decide if those 2 things are the same. "I haven't moved in 2 weeks, he said. "I know," she said. "We're going to change that." She unfolded the wheelchair. The sounds below them were getting closer. The wheelchair unfolded with a metallic snap that sounded, in the silence of that darkened room, like a starter pistol. Vala moved without ceremony. She pulled the brake pins, locked the wheels, and crossed to Torn Gage's bedside in 3 steps. Her hands were already assessing, checking the central line, the drainage tubes, calculating what could be disconnected safely and what would kill him if she touched it wrong. She had done field medicine in conditions that would make this hospital room look like a luxury suite. But field medicine on an unconscious subject was different from field medicine on a man who was watching her with the particular expression of someone deciding in real time whether to fight or comply. "This is going to hurt," she said. "Everything hurts," Torn said. "More than that." He looked at the ceiling. He exhaled through his nose. "Do it." She pulled the drainage tube first, the one from his left side, the one that had been draining for 9 days and was nearly clear, which meant it was close to done anyway. He made a sound that was not quite a word and not quite a scream, and his hand gripped the bedrail hard enough to turn his knuckles white. But he did not move, and he did not make the sound again. She sealed the exit site with the tape from the supply drawer, fast and tight. She capped the central line rather than pulling it. That one she needed to leave in case he crashed and needed a fast medication push. She disconnected the monitors one by one and watched his face for the color changes and the breathing shifts that would tell her his body was handling the interruption. His body handled it. Whatever Torn Gage had been before he ended up in a hospital bed, he had not been soft. "Legs," she said. "What about them? Can you use them?" He thought about it. Not the way a person thinks when they don't know the answer, but the way a person thinks when they know the answer and they're deciding whether the answer is going to cost them more to say out loud than to simply attempt. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. They shook. Not dramatically, not theatrically, a fine, deep tremor in the quadriceps, the kind that comes from 2 weeks of zero use and a body that had lost significant blood and was still rebuilding. He made it to the wheelchair on his own. Barely, but on his own. She did not comment on it. She tucked a blanket across his lap to cover the central line and the remaining tubing, and she looked at the door. The man she had secured on the floor had gone quiet. Too quiet. She glanced at him. Still down. Still breathing. Still tied. Good. "There's a stairwell at the end of the east corridor," she said, thinking out loud but keeping her voice low. "Service stairs, not the main bank. They'll have the elevators compromised. Any team worth the money would do that first. The roof has a landing pad and a hardwired emergency communication panel that doesn't run through the building's main system." Torn looked at her. "You've mapped this floor." "I've mapped every floor." A beat. "Since when?" he said. She didn't answer. She moved to the door, pressed her ear to it, listened for 5 full seconds, then opened it 2 inches and looked out. The hallway was dark except for the emergency strips along the floor. Thin orange lines that gave just enough light to see shapes and not enough to see faces. Darla had gotten everyone into their rooms. The hallway was empty. The second man she had dropped at the nurse's station was still down. She could see the outline of him from here, crumpled against the base of the medication cart. No movement anywhere she could see, which was wrong. More people were in this building. She had heard the footsteps below, which meant they were being careful, which meant they knew something had gone sideways on the 7th floor, and they were regrouping rather than rushing in blind. Professional, disciplined, patient, the worst kind. "We move now," she said. "Stay close, stay quiet. If I stop, you stop. If I go down, you keep moving. East stairs, up 2 flights, roof access door, red panel on the left wall. You hit every button on that panel until something answers." Torrin's voice was dry. "And if you don't go down, then it's a faster trip." She opened the door and pushed the wheelchair out into the hallway. They moved along the wall, Vala keeping her left hand on the push grip and her right hand free, her eyes sweeping the corridor in the systematic, overlapping arcs of someone who had been trained to see a room, not as a room, but as a series of angles and exposure zones in fatal funnels. The orange floor lighting made shadows long and unreliable. Every doorway was a potential problem. Every alcove was a question. They were halfway to the nurse's station when a door to their right opened. Vala's hand came up, a flat, sharp gesture, and stopped. But it was only a patient. An elderly man, 70s, confused and frightened, standing in the doorway in a hospital gown with his IV pole in one hand and his glasses in the other. He looked at Vala. He looked at Torrin in the wheelchair. He looked at the man sprawled unconscious at the nurse's station 15 feet ahead. "What's happening?" he said. His voice was thin and bewildered. "Is it a fire? Someone said it was a fire." "Go back inside," Vala said, gentle but absolute. "Lock your door and don't open it until you hear a police officer identify themselves by badge number. Can you do that?" The old man blinked. "Badge number?" "Badge number," she said. "They have to say it out loud. Do you understand?" He nodded slowly, still looking at the man on the floor. "Go," she said. He went. The door clicked shut. She heard the interior lock engage a second later, and something in her chest loosened fractionally. Not relief, not yet, but the recognition that one variable had been removed from the equation. She kept moving. They reached the nurse's station. She stepped over the second man without looking at him, checked his pulse with 2 fingers as she passed, still strong, still out, and pushed Torrin around the corner toward the east corridor. That was when her phone buzzed. She had it out before the second vibration. Unknown number, local area code. She answered without speaking and held it to her ear. A voice said, "You're the nurse." Male, calm, not the man from room 804, different voice, slightly higher, with a quality of deliberate control that sounded like someone keeping their emotions on a very short leash. She did not recognize it. She filed that away. "Still there?" the voice said. "Still here," she said. "We have 4 people in that building. You've interfered with 3 of them. I'm going to give you an opportunity that I'm not required to give you." A pause. "Walk away. Take the stairs down, go out the service exit, and keep walking. Leave the witness." "No," she said, a longer pause this time. "You understand what you're protecting," the voice said. "That man in the wheelchair, you know what he did before he decided to cooperate with a federal investigation? You know the people he worked for? The things he was part of?" "I know he's a patient," Vala said. "He's a liability." "So are you," she said. "How's your 3-man team doing right now?" Silence. She ended the call. Torrin had been listening. She could feel it in the quality of his stillness. Not the stillness of someone unconscious or unaware, but the stillness of a man absorbing information and deciding what to do with it. He said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, "4." "4," she confirmed. "You've only found 3. "I know. And one of them just called your personal cell phone." She looked at him. "Yes, which means they had your number before tonight." The corridor felt different after that. Not physically, nothing had changed. The orange strips still lit the floor. The rain still hammered the windows at the far end. But the information reorganized the space somehow, made it feel smaller and more watched. Vala had come to Sovereign Heights Medical Center 8 months ago. She had applied for the nursing position under her current identity, clean paperwork, solid references, background check that would satisfy any HR department in the country. She had taken the night shift by request, specifically requested the 7th floor by request, and she had spent 8 months being the most forgettable nurse in the building. Someone had looked harder than they were supposed to look. She kept moving. The east stairwell door was 20 feet ahead. She pushed the wheelchair faster, her eyes on the door, and she was 10 feet from it when it opened from the other side. The 4th man came through the door fast and low, not a gun in his hand, but a tactical baton extended and ready. And he was good. He had come through the door on the hinge side, not the handle side, which meant he had opened it expecting resistance and positioned himself to avoid the first strike. He was young, mid-30s, short, broad, the kind of build that was all engine with no decoration. He took in the wheelchair and Torn, and then Vala, and his eyes locked on her with a recognition that confirmed what the phone call had already told her. He knew who she was, or he knew enough. "Stand down," he said, not threatening, instructive almost, like someone telling a dog to sit. "Step away from the patient." "Not happening," Vala said. He came at her. The baton was fast, and she gave him credit for it. A diagonal strike aimed at her left shoulder, the kind of move designed to numb an arm and remove a defender's ability to block. She slipped it by 2 inches, felt the wind of it pass her ear, and drove her palm upward into his chin. His head snapped back. She caught the baton arm at the wrist on the rebound, hyperextended the elbow, and he dropped it with a grunt that bounced off the stairwell door. He did not go down. She had expected him to go down. He spun out of the hold instead, burning his own elbow to break the joint lock, which told her pain tolerance was not a factor she could use against him, and caught her with a straight shot to the sternum that drove her back 2 full steps and knocked the air out of her chest in a sharp, involuntary rush. Behind her, Torn said something. She didn't hear what. She had maybe 2 seconds before he recovered and set his stance. She used one of them to breathe and one of them to change her approach. She stopped going for control. She stopped trying to subdue, to redirect, to neutralize cleanly. She went for the one thing that always worked, regardless of size or training or pain tolerance. The thing her first instructor had drilled into her during a rainy week in Virginia that she had never forgotten. Collapse the structure. She went low. Both hands caught his knee from the outside. Lateral force, nothing fancy. And the joint gave in the direction a knee is not supposed to give. He went down this time, hard, and the sound he made was different from the earlier ones. Less controlled, more human. She was on top of him before he finished going down, and she put him out the same way she had put out the first one. Pressure point, clinical, fast. He stopped moving. She stood up. Her sternum hurt. Her ribs from the earlier elbow hurt. She ran a hand across her midsection to check for structural damage and found none. Bruised, not broken, and turned back to Torn. He was watching her with an expression she could not fully read. Not fear, not exactly awe, something in between, mixed with something older and more complicated. "You've been doing that for a long time," he said. "Wheelchair," she said. "Move." She pushed the wheelchair to the base of the first flight and then stopped. A wheelchair on a stairwell was not a workable equation, and she had known that from the moment she had unfolded it, had always known this moment was coming. "Stairs," she said. Torrin looked at the first step. His jaw moved. "You're going to carry me. You're going to walk," she said. "I'm going to be right next to you." "My legs." "Your legs work," she said. "I watched you sit up. I watched you transfer." "Your legs work. They hurt, and they're weak, and they haven't done this in 2 weeks, but they work. Every step you take right now is a step further from that room. Focus on that." Torrin Gage was quiet for a moment. Then he put his hands on the armrests and pushed himself up. He stood. He swayed once, a deep, full-body oscillation that looked like a building in a tremor, and then steadied. She put her arm under his, and they began to climb. It was slow. It was not the fast, clean extraction she would have designed if design had been an option. He took each step as a separate problem to be solved. Lift, transfer, plant, stabilize. And his breathing was the ragged, concentrated breathing of someone spending the absolute maximum of what they had. She stayed with him, not pulling, not carrying, but present, a brace against the moments when the tremor in his legs threatened to become a collapse. They made it to the first landing. He stopped, breathing hard. "Keep going," she said. "Give me a second." "We don't have a second." He looked at her. His face was damp with sweat, the color of old ash, and his eyes were bright with the particular ferocity of a man who has decided that dying is not acceptable. "You know," he said between breaths, "most nurses ask how you're feeling." "How are you feeling?" "Terrible." "Good," she said. "Terrible means alive. Let's go." They kept climbing. The second landing, halfway there. Below them, distant, but not distant enough, she heard the stairwell door open on the 7th floor. No voices. Careful. Whoever was still functional down there, whoever had been mobilized after the 4th man went down, was moving with enough discipline to stay quiet. Vala heard the sound and felt the calculation run through her automatically. 1 flight below, moving up, unknown number, armed or unarmed, unclear. She and Torrin were 1 flight below the roof. They had maybe 90 seconds. "Faster," she said. Torrin did not argue. He pulled from somewhere she could not have named, some reserve that had nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with whatever had made him survive 3 gunshots in a parking garage, and he climbed the last flight at a pace that made the one below it look like a warm-up. She stayed with him, her hand on his arm, her eyes on the door above and her ears on the sound below. They hit the roof access door. She tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. She felt along the door frame in the dark, found the emergency bypass panel, popped the cover, and hit the manual release. The door swung open, and a wall of cold, wet, howling air came through it like a living thing. The storm, full force, rain diagonal and hard and tasting of iron. They went through. The roof. Torrin hunched against the wind, one hand raised against the rain, and she guided him toward the far edge, where the communication panel was mounted in a weather-resistant housing. She found it by feel more than sight. Red box, flat against the housing, the raised letters of the emergency designation under her fingertips. She opened it. The panel was intact, hardwired, independent of the building's main system. She had verified this 3 months ago, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when she had told Darla she was going to check the roof access door for a maintenance request and had spent 11 minutes up here alone, memorizing the layout of a space she had hoped she would never need to use. She picked up the handset, dial tone. Beautiful, simple, life-saving dial tone. She dialed. It rang twice. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Philadelphia Field Office. This is Agent. This is a secure emergency call, she said. I need to speak to someone with jurisdiction over a protected witness currently in federal custody at Sovereign Heights Medical Center. The witness is alive. The facility has been compromised. I have 4 hostiles down and at least 1 more active in the building. I need an extraction team, and I need them in the next 10 minutes. A pause on the line. Then a different voice, older, sharper, the voice of someone who had just sat up very straight in their chair. "Who am I speaking to?" Vala looked out at the city below. The rain, the lights bleeding through the wet, the distant sirens that were already beginning to thread through the storm somewhere to the south. "Someone who kept your witness alive tonight," she said. "That's all you need to know right now. Are you moving?" Another pause, shorter this time. "We're moving," the voice said. She looked at Torrin Gage, who was leaning against the housing unit, soaked through, shaking from cold and effort and blood loss, and the sheer accumulated weight of a night that had tried to kill him 3 separate times in the last hour. He looked back at her with those clear, hard, exhausted eyes. "They're coming?" he said. "They're coming," she said. He nodded slowly. Then he looked at her with an expression she had seen before. Not often, but in specific places, in specific circumstances, on the faces of specific people who had been on the wrong end of something terrible and had found, against all logic, that someone had decided to stand between them and it. He said, "Why?" It was a simple question, 4 letters, and it carried inside it the full weight of everything that had happened in the last hour. Every broken bone and neutralized operative and disconnected tube and agonizing stairwell step. All of it compressed into one word, quiet as a breath, with the storm howling around them both. Vala didn't answer right away. She looked at the door behind them. It hadn't opened. Not yet. Then she said, "Because it was my floor." And somewhere below them, inside the building, a door banged open. The door banged open, and the sound of it came up through the roof access shaft like a gunshot. And Vala was moving before the echo died. She crossed to Torrin in 4 steps, grabbed his arm, and pulled him away from the communication housing toward the far side of the roof. He moved, not fast, not gracefully, but he moved. And she gave him credit for it. The rain was coming in sideways now, the kind of rain that doesn't fall so much as attack. And the roof surface was slick under their feet, and the wind was the kind of wind that makes every step a negotiation between intention and gravity. "How far?" Torrin said. "Far enough," she said. She positioned them behind the HVAC housing, the large metal unit that sat toward the northwest corner of the roof, and threw enough shadow and bulk to break a sight line from the access door. She pressed Torrin against the back of it and put herself between him and the door and listened. Footsteps on the stairs. One set, moving fast but not reckless. Someone who was angry but not stupid. The door came open the rest of the way. She counted 1 breath, 2, 3. A flashlight beam swept the roof in a wide arc. It crossed the communication housing, the antenna arrays, the empty wheelchair she had left near the access door. She had left it deliberately, a placement that suggested flight rather than concealment, a direction away from where they actually were. The beam followed it, moved left, moved further left, away from them. Torrin's shoulder was pressed against hers, and she could feel the tremor in him. Cold, exhaustion, blood loss, all of it blurring together into a vibration that was too constant and too deep to be just fear. His breathing was controlled. Whatever this man had been before he climbed into federal protection, he knew how to be quiet when quiet was what survival required. The flashlight swept back, slower this time. The man with the flashlight was not fooled, or he had stopped being fooled. He was doing a methodical grid search now, moving the beam in overlapping horizontal passes from left to right, and in approximately 12 seconds it was going to hit the HVAC housing. Vala measured the distance between them and the door. 22 feet. Open roof, no cover, slick surface. Torrin on legs that had already given everything they had tonight. If she broke for the door, she'd make it. If she tried to take Torrin with her, she wouldn't. Not before that beam found them. She needed a distraction. She pulled the laminated badge from her pocket, the one she had taken off the first man in the electrical alcove, and she threw it hard and flat, like skipping a stone, toward the far edge of the roof. It hit the surface 3 times before it struck a drainage channel with a sharp metallic clatter that was perfectly audible even over the storm. The flashlight beam snapped hard to the right. A voice said tight and clipped, "Don't move." He thought he'd found them. She moved. 22 feet, half carrying Torin, the rain in her face and her feet finding grip where they could. She hit the access door with her shoulder, pushed through, and they were back in the stairwell, the door swinging shut behind them, the dark and the cold concrete closing around them like a hand. "Down," she said. "You said up. That was before. Down. Now." They went down, not to the 7th floor. That was compromised. 4 neutralized operatives and whatever had come after them. She took him to the 6th floor, pushed through the access door into a ward that was quieter, darker, less disrupted. The power was still out on this floor too, emergency lighting only, but the staff here had not been alerted the way the 7th floor had, and she could see a cluster of nurses at the far end near the main station. Flashlights and hushed voices, the particular contained panic of medical professionals processing an unexpected crisis. She needed them to not see Torin. She needed 30 more seconds. She pulled him into the first empty room on the right. 604, no patient, the bed stripped and waiting, the way empty hospital rooms always look like they're expecting something bad. She eased him into the bedside chair and checked his central line. Still intact. She checked his color. Not good, but not critical. His hands were shaking badly, and she could see in the set of his mouth that the pain was significant and building. The adrenaline that had carried him up 2 flights of stairs starting to thin out in his bloodstream like a fire running out of fuel. "Talk to me," she said, pressing 2 fingers to his wrist. Pulse fast, thready, compensating. "I'm fine," he said. "You're not fine. Talk to me anyway. Keep your blood pressure up." He looked at her. Then, with the particular gallows composure of a man who had nothing left to lose by honesty, "I have a daughter." She didn't look up from his wrist. "How old?" 23. "She doesn't know where I am. She doesn't know any of this." He paused. "She thinks I'm in Arizona. Business trip." "What's her name?" "Why?" "Because talking about her is keeping your heart rate at something functional. What's her name?" A beat. "Mara," he said. "Her name is Mara." Vala looked up at him. "Good. Tell me about Mara." He almost smiled. Almost. "She's studying to be a teacher. Elementary school. She's nothing like me. She's patient and she's kind and she thinks the best of people until they give her an absolute reason not to." He stopped. His voice had gone rougher, not from the cold. "She doesn't know what I did, what I was part of. She never knew any of it." Vala said nothing. She had heard confessions in unusual places before. You learn not to respond to the content and just let the words do what they needed to do. Release pressure, like bleeding a valve. Something that had to happen or the whole system blew. "If I don't make it out of tonight," Torin said, and his voice had steadied now, gone hard and deliberate. The softness of 30 seconds ago locked back behind whatever door he usually kept it behind. "The name Marcus Hale. You remember that name." "Marcus Hale," she said. "He's the one who ordered this. Not a contractor, not a middleman. Him directly. He has 3 federal judges in his pocket and 2 U.S. senators, and he has been operating under complete immunity for 11 years because no one credible enough has been willing to testify against him." He looked at her. "Until me." Vala held his gaze. "The man on the phone," she said, "the one who called my cell." Torin nodded once. That was Marcus Hale. The room was quiet for exactly 2 seconds, and then the sound of boots in the corridor broke it. Multiple sets, coordinated, moving in the measured, overlapping pattern of a team doing a room-to-room sweep. Not police, not hospital security. The footsteps were too disciplined, too evenly spaced. The kind of movement that only comes from people who have practiced it together until it is automatic. Vala stood up. She looked at the door. She looked at Torin. "Can you stand?" she said. "Again?" "Last time tonight," she said. "I promise." He looked at her with an expression that was somewhere between exhaustion and something that might have been the very earliest edge of trust. Not the kind of trust that is built over time, but the emergency kind. The kind you extend to someone in the dark when they are the only thing standing between you and the dark getting permanent. He stood up. She moved the chair in front of the door, wedged the back of it under the handle, and crossed to the window. The footsteps were close now. 2 rooms down, she could hear voices, low, clipped, professional, and the specific sound of a door being checked and cleared. 1 room down, she opened the window. The wind came in like it had been waiting. Rain immediately, cold immediately. The kind of immediate physical shock that wakes every nerve in the body at once. She looked out, assessed the ledge, 6 inches wide, rain slick. The wall of the building blank on either side for 6 feet before the next window. Torin looked at the window, then at her. "No," he said. "It's 2 windows over," she said. "I can barely stand." "I know, you won't be standing." The door handle moved. The chair held, but only for a moment, only against the first push. And whoever was on the other side knew immediately what the resistance meant, because the pushing stopped. And there was a half-second pause, and then a different sound, lower and more deliberate, the sound of someone preparing to force the door properly. Vala made a decision. She put her hands up and said, "Don't fire. Civilian, coming to the door." She moved the chair. She opened the door. 3 figures in the doorway, tactical gear, helmets, weapons up. But on the chest of the center one, even in the bad light, she could see it. The blue letters on the vest, FBI. She said, "Vala Rice, the witness is secure. I made the call from the roof 20 minutes ago." The center agent, a woman, compact and sharp-eyed behind the helmet visor, did not lower her weapon. Identification. "My ID is in my left breast pocket," Vala said. "I'm going to reach for it slowly. The witness is behind me, and he needs immediate medical attention. Central line still in, possible circulation compromise in both legs, significant blood pressure drop over the last 40 minutes. She reached into her pocket, slowly, and held out the ID. The agent took it, looked at it, looked at Vala, looked at it again. Something shifted in her expression. Not much, barely a millimeter, but enough. "Clear the room," she said to the other 2. Then she looked at Vala and said, in a different register, quieter, stripped of the tactical authority, "How long have you been on this floor?" "Tonight? About an hour and a half. At Sovereign Heights." 8 months, Vala said. The agent looked at her for a moment that lasted just a beat longer than a professional assessment required. Then she stepped back and called something into her earpiece, and the 2 agents moved past Vala to Torin, and the room filled with the controlled, efficient activity of people who had been trained to do exactly this. Torin let them take him. He looked back at Vala once, over the shoulder of the agent supporting his weight, and his expression said something that his mouth didn't, and she held his gaze just long enough to let him know she had received it. Then she looked at the agent with the ID. "Marcus Hale," Vala said. The agent went still. "He called my cell from an unknown number approximately 45 minutes ago. He identified himself by his operational behavior. He had my phone number, which means he had run intelligence on me prior to tonight. He offered to let me walk if I left the witness." She paused. "I recorded the call." The agent stared at her. "You recorded it?" "Passive record. My phone does it automatically. You'll want that audio." She held out the phone. "You'll also want the badge I took off the first operative. There's a frequency chip in the laminate that isn't standard issue for any maintenance contractor. And the signal jammer I found is crushed, but the casing should have prints." The agent took the phone. She was looking at Vala the way people look at something they're trying to categorize and not finding the right category for. Ms. Rice, I need to ask you something directly.
Go ahead.
Who are you? It was the same question the man in room 804 had asked. The same question the third operative had asked. The same question that had been floating under every interaction since the moment she had stepped out of Mr. Kowalski's room and felt the prickle at the base of her neck. Vala looked at the agent. She said, "A nurse, 7th floor, night shift." The agent held her gaze. Then she looked down at the ID in her hand one more time, and something in the set of her jaw told Vala that the agent was not satisfied with that answer, had the instincts to know it was not a complete answer, and was also experienced enough to know that some answers are not given. They are found, later, through different channels, at a different time. She handed the ID back without another word. The radio on her vest crackled. A voice came through. "Roof clear. 1 subject detained, non-cooperative. 2 others in custody on 7. Sweep ongoing." The agent responded into her radio, moving back into the hall, and Vala was alone in the empty room for exactly 5 seconds. 5 seconds was enough. She reached into her left scrub pocket and removed a small device, the size and shape of a thumb drive, matte black, with a single red indicator light that had been dark all night and was still dark now. She looked at it. She thought about Torrin Gage saying the name Marcus Hale with the weight of 11 years behind it. She thought about a 23-year-old named Mara who was studying to be an elementary school teacher and thought her father was in Arizona on a business trip. She put the device back in her pocket. She walked out of room 604 into the corridor. The FBI team was moving with precision now. Multiple agents, 2 of them escorting Torrin on a gurney that had materialized from somewhere. The agent in charge coordinating a sweep of the building through her earpiece. The whole machine of federal response grinding into motion the way it does when someone finally makes it move. The hallway was brighter now. Portable lights brought up with the tactical team. Hot white LED casting hard edges on everything. It was in that light that Darla found her. Darla was at the far end of the corridor, still in her charge nurse vest, her reading glasses now around her neck, her coffee mug long abandoned somewhere. She looked like a woman who had been through something and had processed it and come out the other side angrier than when she went in, which was, Vala had come to understand, how Darla processed almost everything. She walked straight to Vala and stopped 6 inches away. "Vala Rice," she said. "Darla, you want to tell me what the hell just happened on my ward?" "There were intruders," Vala said. "They came for the patient in 804. They're in custody now." Darla stared at her. "That is not what I'm asking, and you know it." "I know. You put 3 men on the floor. I saw 2 of them. I've been a nurse for 27 years and I have never, not once, seen anyone do what you did tonight." Her voice was not admiring, exactly. It was something more complicated than admiration, something that sat at the junction of awe and the particular betrayal of someone who realizes that a person they thought they knew was not what they appeared. "Who are you?" The question for the 3rd time tonight. It had a different weight coming from Darla. From the man in room 804, it had been calculating. From the FBI agent, it had been professional. From Darla, it was personal, and Vala felt it land differently in her chest. She said, "I'm your night nurse. I'm going to finish my rounds." Darla's jaw tightened. Her eyes were bright. "Every patient on this floor is asking questions. Mr. Kowalski is crying. The man in 716 had a cardiac event. Mild, we caught it, he's stable. But his monitor was offline for 12 minutes because someone pulled the central power and my staff could not." She stopped. She pressed her lips together. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. The anger compressed into something more like grief. "You could have told me." "No," Vala said, "I couldn't. You didn't trust me." It wasn't about trust. Vala looked at her, really looked at her. At 19 years of night shifts and difficult families and short staffing and impossible decisions made in impossible moments, all of it visible in Darla's face, the way experience is always visible if you know what to look at. If I had told you, you would have tried to help. And if you had tried to help, one of those men would have hurt you. I couldn't let that happen. Darla was quiet. 716 is stable, Vala said. I want to check him myself. She walked past Darla and down the hall and nobody stopped her. Room 716 was a man named Howard Briggs, 71, post-bypass surgery, admitted 3 days ago and progressing well until tonight. He was awake when she entered, pale, frightened, both hands gripping the bed rail with the careful deliberateness of a man managing his own fear by focusing it into something physical. "Hey there," he said when he saw her. His voice was hoarse. "You're the quiet one." "I am," she said. She moved to his monitor, checked his vitals, checked his leads. "Heard some noise tonight," he said. "There was some noise," she agreed. "That other nurse, the big one, Darla, she came in during and told me everything was fine." He paused. "She was lying." "She was protecting you," Vala said. "Same thing sometimes." He was quiet for a moment. His vitals were stabilizing, blood pressure coming back, rhythm normalizing. "You all right?" he said. She looked at him. "You look like someone who just did something hard," he said, with the directness of a man his age who had stopped seeing the point in euphemism. "I'm all right," she said. "Somebody needed help." "Yes," he nodded, satisfied, like this answered a question he had already mostly answered for himself. "Good," he said. "That's the whole job, isn't it? Somebody needs help. You help them." He closed his eyes. "Wake me up for breakfast." She turned off the overhead light and left him. In the corridor, 2 FBI agents were setting up a command post near the nurse's station, and she could see through the window at the end of the hall that the rain was beginning to thin. Not stopping, not yet, but losing the ferocity it had carried for the last 3 hours, settling into the ordinary gray persistence of a late October night in Philadelphia, finally deciding it had made its point. She checked the time, 2:47 in the morning. She had been on shift for 4 hours. She had 8 hours left. She pulled the elastic band out of her hair, smoothed it back, and put the elastic band back in. She picked up her chart tablet from the nurse's station, where it had sat untouched since 11:15. She pulled up Mr. Kowalski's file and began updating his notes. One of the FBI agents, younger, the one who had been on the end during the room-to-room sweep, came up beside her. He didn't say anything immediately. He just stood there the way people stand when they have something to say and they haven't sorted it into the right words yet. Then he said, "We found a second phone on the man from the roof. Active call log. The last outgoing call was to a number registered to a shell company in Delaware that our forensic team flagged 18 months ago as connected to Marcus Hale's network." She kept typing. "That's significant," he said. "Yes," she said. "That, combined with the audio on your phone and the signal jammer casing, we're looking at a RICO predicate, federal prosecution, the kind that doesn't go away." She stopped typing. She looked at him. He was young, late 20s, earnest in the way that either gets knocked out of people by the work or gets reinforced by it, and with him she could not yet tell which way it was going to go. "Torrin Gage testifies," she said. "That's the whole point of everything that happened tonight. He has to actually testify." "He will," the agent said. "He's asking for you, by the way." She looked toward the end of the corridor where the gurney had gone. "He's in 608, the agent said. "We're securing the room," he said. He paused, consulting something in his notes, and she had the sense he was being precise, trying to get it right. He said, "Tell the nurse I want to talk to her before they take me downstairs." She closed the chart. She looked at the agent. 5 minutes, she said. Room 608 was full of people, and then, when she entered, it was less full. The 2 agents near the bed stepping back without being asked, reading something in her approach that told them this was not a conversation that needed witnesses. Torin was on the bed, hooked back to monitoring equipment, a drip running into the central line. Color still bad, but better than it had been on the roof. He looked at her. She pulled the chair up and sat. "You're staying," he said. "I'm finishing my shift," she said. "You're not going to disappear. Walk out. Vanish." He said it not as a question, but as something he was testing, rolling the idea around to see how it sounded. "Not tonight," she said. His eyes were sharp on her face. "But eventually." She did not confirm or deny that. He exhaled slowly. "They're going to want to know who you are. Properly. They're going to dig." "Let them dig," she said. "You're not worried." "I'm always worried," she said. "I've learned to function inside it." He was quiet for a moment. The monitor beside him beeped its steady, patient rhythm, and the rain outside had gone to almost nothing. Just a whisper now against the window, the storm finally spent. He said without looking at her, "I've been a lot of things I'm not proud of. You know that. You knew it before I told you anything tonight." "I know," she said. "And you still—" He stopped, started again. "You still came back through that door." "Yes." "Why?" For the second time tonight, the word landed between them with its full weight. For the second time tonight, she sat with it for a moment before she answered. "Because some things are just right," she said. "Not complicated, not strategic, just right." She stood up. "Get some sleep. The FBI is going to have you in a very long room with very bright lights for the next several days, and you're going to need every hour you can get." She pushed the chair back. She was at the door when he said, "Vala." She stopped. "Thank you," he said. She didn't turn around. "Get some sleep, Mr. Gage," she said, and she walked back out into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind her and stood there for exactly 3 seconds in the quiet of the corridor, the emergency lights back to their usual amber, the building settling into the particular exhausted piece of a place that has been through something and is deciding what to do next. Then she picked up her chart tablet. She had 11 more patients to check on before morning. She checked all 11 patients before 4 in the morning. Mr. Kowalski had stopped crying by the time she got to him, but his eyes were still red, and he held onto her wrist with both hands when she came to adjust his drip, not saying anything, just holding on the way a person holds onto something solid when the ground has recently proven unreliable. She let him. She stood there for 40 seconds and let him hold her wrist, and she looked at his vitals and said nothing until he was ready to let go. He let go. "You're going to be fine," she said. "I know that," he said, a little indignant, a little embarrassed. It was a lot of noise." "It was," she agreed. "It's quiet now." She finished the round and came back to the nurse's station at 4:12 and sat down and began writing her incident notes, which were the most carefully worded incident notes she had ever written in 8 months at Sovereign Heights. She chose every word with the precision of someone who understands that documentation is a form of architecture. What you include and what you exclude, and how you phrase the joints between those two things, determines what the structure will support when weight is eventually applied to it. She wrote, "Observed 2 unauthorized personnel in maintenance attire exhibiting behavior inconsistent with facility protocols. Responded in accordance with patient safety obligations. Witness secured pending federal coordination." She wrote nothing about hand-to-hand combat. She wrote nothing about pressure points or joint locks or the tactical assessment of footstep patterns. She wrote the notes of a diligent, observant, quick-thinking nurse who had done her job under difficult circumstances. She saved the document. Darla came and stood behind her without speaking for a moment, reading over her shoulder. Then Darla said, "That's not what happened." "That's what the report says happened," Vala said. Another silence. Then Darla put her hand briefly on Vala's shoulder. Not a squeeze, not a pat, just a placement. A human hand on a human shoulder for 3 seconds. And walked away without another word. That was at 4:14 in the morning. At 4:51, the FBI agent in charge, the woman whose name Vala had learned was Special Agent Dana Reyes, came back to the 7th floor and asked Vala to come with her. Vala went. They sat in the family consultation room at the end of the east corridor, the one with the soft chairs and the box of tissues on the table that was always half empty because the news delivered in that room was almost always the kind of news that required tissues. Reyes sat across from her with a tablet and a recorder and the expression of someone who had been running on adrenaline for 6 hours and was now running on something thinner and colder. "I need a full account," Reyes said, "beginning to end. Everything you observed, everything you did in sequence. I gave you the incident report." "I read your incident report," Reyes said. "It's very clean." She held Vala's gaze. "Too clean." Vala said nothing. Reyes leaned forward. She set her tablet down. She turned the recorder off, a deliberate gesture, visible, intended to be seen, and she folded her hands on the table and spoke in a register that was different from the one she had used in the corridor. Not official, not tactical, just direct. "4 highly trained operatives," she said. "1 on the floor in the electrical alcove, 1 at the nurse's station, 1 secured in 804, 1 detained on the roof, all neutralized by a single individual with no reported injuries beyond bruised ribs." She paused. "The man from room 804, Carver, we ID'd him. 3 years special forces, 2 years private contracting. Told the arresting team that the nurse who took him down moved like, and I'm quoting him directly, something I've only ever seen in Tier 1 operators. He said that. A man with his background said that about you." The room was quiet. "I'm not here to burn you," Reyes said. "Whatever your background is, whatever your current arrangement is, that's not my department tonight. Tonight my department is Torrin Gage and Marcus Hale. You gave me an audio recording of Hale directly authorizing a hit on a protected federal witness. Do you understand what that is? That is the single most significant piece of evidence in a federal investigation that has been running for 6 years." She stopped. Her voice dropped further. "You saved that case tonight. You saved that man's life. Whatever you are, whatever you were, I need you to know that." Vala looked at the turned-off recorder. She looked at Reyes. She said, "Are we off the record?" "We're off the record." "Marcus Hale knew my phone number," Vala said. "He had it before tonight, which means he ran intelligence on hospital staff or someone inside the protection detail gave it to him." Reyes went very still. "He called me by operational implication," Vala continued. "He offered me an exit. He wasn't surprised that I had taken down his people. He adjusted to it in real time on that call. That is not the behavior of someone receiving bad news. That is the behavior of someone who had contingency plans built around the possibility that his primary team would fail." She paused. "Which means he knew there was a variable on this floor he hadn't fully accounted for. He didn't know exactly what I was, but he knew I was something." Reyes's jaw was tight. "You're saying there's a leak in the protection detail. I'm saying the math doesn't work without one." Reyes stood up. She walked to the window. She stood there for a moment with her back to Vala, and Vala could see in the set of her shoulders the specific weight of a person absorbing information that reorganizes everything they thought they knew about a situation they thought they had controlled. Then Reyes turned around. "I have 4 agents on the protection rotation. I've worked with all of them for—" "How long has Gage been at this facility?" Vala said. 16 days. And the attack was tonight, not the first night, not the second, night 16. She let that sit for a moment. Someone needed time to plan, to position, to move assets into the city. Or someone needed time to find the right moment to pass information. Reyes was looking at her with the expression of someone who has just been shown a door they didn't know was there and is deciding whether to walk through it or pretend they didn't see it. "The youngest agent on your rotation," Vala said. "How long has he been with the Bureau?" Reyes said nothing. "He was on the door tonight," Vala said. He had his phone out. He went into the room on my instruction and locked the door, and I did not see him again until your team arrived. She paused. I'm not making an accusation. I'm giving you a data point. The room was very quiet. His name is Derek Voss, Rhea said, and the way she said it, flat, careful, like someone setting a glass down very gently, told Vala that the name had landed somewhere in Reyes's memory that was not empty. I don't know if it's him, Vala said. I'm telling you the question is worth asking. Reyes picked up her recorder. She looked at it. She put it back down. If you're right, she said, and there's a source inside the detail, Hale's legal team will use that at trial. They'll argue the entire protective custody arrangement was compromised, fruit of the poison tree. They will try to get Gage's testimony excluded. Then you need to find the source before trial, Vala said. 11 days. Reyes looked at her. You're very calm about this. I'm always calm, Vala said. It's a professional habit. A beat. The audio from your phone, Reyes said. Our forensic team pulled the metadata 20 minutes ago. The call that came to your number, it didn't originate from a shell company phone. It originated from a device registered to a private security consultancy in McLean, Virginia. She stopped. That consultancy has a federal contractor ID. It does work for 3 different government agencies. Another stop. One of those agencies is the one that issues the kind of background clearance that would allow someone to be carrying the ID you showed me earlier tonight. The silence between them had a different texture now. Ms. Rice, Reyes said carefully, are you currently active? I am a nurse, Vala said. 7th floor, night shift. That's not what I asked. That's the answer I have, Vala said. Reyes held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once, slowly, with the particular precision of someone filing something under a category that they will return to later. And she stood up. The Bureau is going to want a formal interview, probably today. I'll be available after my shift ends, Vala said. Your shift ends at 7. Then I'll be available at 7:15. Reyes almost smiled. Almost. She picked up her tablet and walked to the door, and then stopped with her hand on the frame and said without turning around, for what it's worth, what you did tonight, the restraint you showed, 4 trained operatives, and none of them are in critical condition. You could have done a lot more damage and you didn't. She paused. That tells me something about who you are. Vala didn't respond. Reyes walked out. The family consultation room was quiet. The half-empty tissue box sat on the table. The soft chairs held nobody. Vala sat in the particular stillness of someone who has just watched a thread of their carefully constructed life get pulled on and is measuring how much has unraveled. Not much. Not yet, but the thread had been found. She sat there for 90 seconds. Then she stood up and went back to her patients. At 5:30 in the morning, the main power came back on. It happened all at once, the way the outage had. No gradual brightening, just a sudden full return of every light in the building. The overhead fluorescents snapping back to their flat institutional white, and the equipment displays lighting up, and the elevator bank at the end of the hall chiming back to life. Several patients made sounds. Howard Briggs, who had told her to wake him for breakfast, slept through the entire thing. The 7th floor looked different in full light. It looked like what it was, a hospital ward that had been through something. And the signs of it were visible in the small ways that the big things always leave their marks in small details. A dent in the wall where the medication cart had gone over. Scuff marks on the floor near the nurse's station. A section of wall phone bracket where the handset had been ripped away, the wires cut and the bracket bent, still not repaired. Darla stood at the nurse's station looking at the bent bracket with an expression that Vala recognized. The expression of someone taking inventory of damage. Not physical damage, but the subtler kind, the kind you can't see on a wall. Maintenance is coming at 8, Darla said when Vala approached. Good, Vala said. Hospital administration wants a meeting at 9. With you. Darla's voice was neutral. Deliberately neutral. The way a person makes their voice when they are holding several things at once and don't want any of them to tip over. And the FBI, and apparently somebody from a department that Administrator Cho wouldn't name, which, in 27 years, has never happened. Vala picked up her chart tablet. Vala, Darla's voice dropped. Are you in trouble? She considered the question honestly. I don't think so, she said. Not the kind you mean. What kind do I mean? The kind where you need a lawyer. And the other kind? Vala looked at her. The kind where everything gets complicated and quiet, and then eventually settles back into something that looks almost like normal. Darla absorbed this. She pressed her lips together. Then she said, in the voice she used when she had decided to stop asking questions and start accepting answers. Mr. Kowalski wants French toast for breakfast. The cafeteria doesn't do French toast. He's been asking me about it for 20 minutes. I'll talk to him, Vala said. She was halfway down the hall when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Different area code from the call earlier. West Coast, looks like. She answered it. Silence for 2 seconds. Then a voice she recognized immediately, the way you recognize a voice that you have not heard in 2 years, but that was, for a significant period of your life, one of the most important voices you knew. You had a busy night, the voice said. Commander Joel Strauss, retired, technically. I did, she said. She kept walking, kept her voice even, kept her face the face of a nurse doing rounds. Bureau's already talking, Strauss said. Audio of Hale is making the rounds at a level I won't name on this line. People are very interested in the source. The source is a night nurse who observed a security incident, she said. A pause. Vala. Joel. How bad is the exposure? She thought about Reyes turning off the recorder. She thought about the question about whether she was currently active. She thought about the device in her left pocket with its dark indicator light. Manageable, she said. The man from room 804, Carver, he's going to talk to federal prosecutors. He's already asking for a deal. He's going to describe what happened in that room in considerable detail. Let him, she said. A nurse defended a patient. That's a legal act. The way you defended him is not how a nurse is trained to defend anyone. I cross-trained, she said. Strauss was quiet for a moment. She could hear the very faint background of wherever he was. Outdoors, the sound of wind, maybe a coast, maybe not. The administration meeting at 9, he said. There's going to be someone in that room who isn't FBI and isn't hospital administration, and you'll know them when you see them. Don't confirm anything. Don't deny anything. Let them make the first move. Her steps slowed, just slightly. You knew this was coming, she said. You knew there would be a moment on this floor when... We didn't know when, he said. We didn't know the exact circumstances. We put you there because the probability was assessed as significant and because you were the right person for the position. I was the right person, she said, and her voice had something in it now that she did not usually let into her voice, something that lived just below the professional calm. You put me in an 8-month cover with no backup and no extraction protocol, and when the moment came, I was the only thing standing between a federal witness and 4 trained operatives. You handled it. I handled it, she said. That's not the point. Vala, I handled it, she said again, quieter this time. The thing in her voice pulled back under. But I want to be told things, Joel, not positioned, told. A long pause, the wind on his end, the fluorescent hum on hers. There's more you don't know, he said. There's more about Torrin Gage and about what he's going to testify to that goes beyond Marcus Hale. We'll talk after the 9 o'clock meeting, not on this line. She stopped walking. She was outside Mr. Kowalski's room, her hand on the door. How much more, she said. Enough that tonight wasn't the end of anything, Strauss said. It was closer to a beginning. The call ended. She stood outside Mr. Kowalski's door, and she held the phone in her hand, and she stood there for the count of 3 breaths. doing what she had always done in the moment between receiving difficult information and being required to function normally. She took the information and she put it somewhere that was not the front of her mind, and she closed the door on it, firmly, with the understanding that she would open it again when the time was right, and not before. Then she pushed open Mr. Kowalski's door. He was sitting up in bed with his arms crossed, and his expression carrying the particular grievance of a man who has been thinking about French toast for 45 minutes. "The cafeteria," she started. "I know what the cafeteria does," he said. "I've been here for 11 days. I know exactly what the cafeteria does. What I am asking is whether an exception might be made given that last night was, in my opinion, an exceptional circumstance." "I'll see what I can do," she said. He looked at her. His expression softened slightly. Not a lot. He was a man who softened his expressions in very small increments. And he said, "Are you all right? You look like you haven't slept." "I'm working," she said. "That's not what I asked." She looked at him. 72 years old, retired postal worker, 3 grandchildren whose names she knew because he mentioned them daily. A man who had spent 11 days in a hospital bed and had held her wrist in the dark and had not asked a single question about the things he had heard in the hallway last night. "I'm all right," she said. "I promise." He nodded, satisfied in the way Howard Briggs had been satisfied. That simple, undemanding acceptance that certain older people offer when they have lived long enough to understand that some things don't need elaboration to be true. "French toast," he reminded her. "Working on it," she said. At 6:45, with 15 minutes left in her shift, Vala was at the nurse's station completing her final chart entries when the elevator at the end of the hall opened and a man stepped out whom she had never seen before. He was neither young nor old, neither remarkable nor unremarkable, in a gray suit that was expensive enough to be deliberate and ordinary enough to be a choice. He had a lanyard she didn't recognize and a visitor badge that the front desk had issued, which meant he had identified himself with something convincing. And he walked down the corridor with the measured pace of someone who knew exactly where he was going and had already decided how the next conversation was going to proceed. He stopped at the nurse's station. He looked at her. She looked at him. "Ms. Rice," he said. His voice was the same careful, modulated instrument of a man who had spent years in rooms where every syllable was a decision. "I believe we have a 9 o'clock. "I believe we do," she said. "I wanted to come up early," he paused, "to give you an opportunity to hear something before the meeting." He glanced once at Darla, who was at the medication cart and whose posture indicated she was listening to every word while pretending she wasn't, and then back at Vala. "Privately, if you don't mind." Vala saved her chart entry. She stood up. She followed him to the family consultation room, the same room where she had sat with Reyes, the same half-empty tissue box on the table. And she sat down and he sat across from her, and he opened a thin folder that contained, she could see from the angle, a photograph. He placed it on the table and turned it to face her. It was a photograph of her, not as Vala Rice, not in scrubs, a photograph from another time and another identity and another version of her life that was supposed to be buried deep enough that a gray suit in a Philadelphia hospital should not, under any circumstances, be able to produce it in a manila folder at 6:47 in the morning. She looked at the photograph. She looked at him. She kept her face exactly as it was. "I'm not here to threaten you," he said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm here because last night you did something that the people I work for consider extremely significant, and they want to make sure that the significance is properly acknowledged." He folded his hands. "Torrin Gage is going to testify. That testimony is going to land Marcus Hale in a federal courtroom. Hale's network, which is larger and more deeply embedded in several institutions than even the FBI's current case file reflects, is going to spend the next 18 months being dismantled from the inside out." He paused. That process is going to require people in certain positions. Positions that require a specific combination of skills and temperament. Vala said, "You're offering me an assignment." "I'm describing a need," he said. "That's different." "Is it?" He almost smiled. "Ms. Rice, the name I know you by, the real one. The people who know what you are and what you've done consider last night a proof of concept. Not your capabilities. We've always known your capabilities. Your restraint." He looked at her steadily. 4 operatives, none of them critical. A building full of patients, none of them additionally harmed. A federal witness alive and intact. An audio recording that will anchor a federal prosecution. All of it accomplished by a woman who, as far as anyone in this building is concerned, is just the quiet night nurse on the 7th floor. The tissue box sat between them on the table. The morning light was coming through the window now, thin, gray, the first real light after the storm, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's been washed and set out to dry. "The device in your left pocket," he said. "The indicator light went active at 5:42 this morning." She did not reach for her pocket. She did not look down. "That was us," he said, "letting you know we were watching, letting you know you weren't alone in this." He leaned back in his chair. "You've never been alone in this." She thought about 8 months of night shifts, 8 months of rounds and chart entries and Mr. Kowalski and Darla's coffee mug and the elastic band she used every single night for her hair. 8 months of being the most forgettable person in a building she had memorized down to the location of every emergency panel on every floor. "Joel told you about the 9 o'clock, she said. "Joel works for us," the man said. "He always has." He paused. "As do you, as you know." "I was put here," she said. "Not placed, not positioned. Put here. Without full information, without backup, with everything you needed," he said, "which turned out to be exactly you. Nothing else required." The words settled in the room. She looked at him. She looked at the photograph. She thought about Torn Gage saying it was closer to a beginning. She thought about a 23-year-old named Mara who thought her father was in Arizona. "What's the assignment?" she said. He opened the folder to the second page. The second page of the folder contained a name, a photograph, and 4 lines of text. Vala read all of it in approximately 6 seconds, and then looked up at the man in the gray suit and said nothing for a moment because the name on that page was not a name she had expected to see, and the photograph attached to it was not a face she had expected to encounter again in any capacity, operational or otherwise. The name was Elena Marsh. The photograph was of a woman in her mid-40s, dark-haired, sharp-featured, standing outside a building in what appeared to be Geneva. She looked like a banker. She looked like someone who lunched at places that required reservations 3 weeks in advance and never raised her voice and never needed to because the particular quality of her silence had always been enough. Vala had met Elena Marsh exactly once, 18 months ago, in a different city, under a different name, in circumstances that had ended with 2 people hospitalized and a 3rd dead, and Vala on a plane out of the country before the local police had finished their first interview. She set the page down. "No," she said. The man in the gray suit did not look surprised. "You haven't heard the full—" "I don't need the full brief," she said. "The answer is no." He closed the folder. He did it slowly, with the deliberateness of someone who has anticipated resistance and is not alarmed by it. "Elena Marsh is the financial architecture behind Marcus Hale's entire operation," he said. "Not a peripheral player, not a contractor, the infrastructure. The money that pays the men who came through this building last night ran through accounts she controls. The judges Hale owns were purchased with funds she moved. The senators are on a retainer she manages." He paused. "If Hale goes to trial and Marsh is not simultaneously dismantled, the network survives the prosecution. It reconstitutes. Different name, different face at the top, same machinery." Vala looked at the closed folder. She's in Philadelphia, the man said. The room shifted, not physically, but something in the air changed. The way air changes in a space when information enters it that reorganizes everything else. She's been in Philadelphia for 4 days, he said. She arrived the same day the operation against Gage was finalized. She doesn't run things from a distance. She came to observe, to make sure. He paused. She's staying at the Rittenhouse, under her own name, which tells you how confident she is. Another pause. She has a flight out this afternoon at 2. Vala said, "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Talk to her," he said. "Talk to her. That's all. Make contact. She won't run from a nurse. She'll run from a federal badge. And we don't have enough on her yet to make an arrest that sticks. But if someone makes contact, someone she doesn't identify as a threat, someone outside the official channels, she'll talk. She always talks. It's the one vanity she has." He looked at Vala. "She likes to explain herself to people she thinks can't stop her." "And then what?" "And then the conversation gets recorded," he said, "and the recording gets added to everything else we already have, and the case becomes airtight enough that even 3 federal judges in Hale's pocket can't find a seam in it." Vala sat with that for a moment. "She knows what I look like," she said, "from 18 months ago." "She knows what you look like," the man said. 18 months ago. Different hair, different weight, different context. She doesn't know Vala Rice. She doesn't know this face in this city, in this role. He paused. "You've been doing this for 8 months without her having any idea you were here. One more morning is not a different proposition." The morning light through the window had strengthened. The hallway outside the consultation room was moving now. Day shift beginning to arrive, the sounds of the building changing register from the hollow nighttime acoustics to the fuller, busier sound of a hospital at 6 in the morning. Her shift ended in 13 minutes. She thought about Torrin Gage on a gurney, looking back at her over the agent's shoulder. She thought about Strauss saying it was closer to a beginning. She thought about Mara, 23 years old, studying to be a teacher, thinking her father was in Arizona. She thought about the men who had come through this building last night and the money that had paid them, and the hand that had moved that money, and the calm, expensive face in the photograph that belonged to a woman currently eating breakfast at the Rittenhouse Hotel 3 miles from here, confident enough to be doing it under her own name. 2 conditions, Vala said. The man in the gray suit waited. "After this, I get full information before placement, not positioning, not probability assessments filtered through Joel Strauss. Full information, directly, before I go anywhere." He nodded once. "And Derek Voss," she said, "the marshal. Reyes is going to find him. I want to know that when she does, it goes somewhere. That it doesn't get buried because he's useful to someone higher up the chain." The man in the gray suit was quiet for exactly the right amount of time. The amount of time that told her the request had landed somewhere real and not just been absorbed into a diplomatic silence. "Agreed," he said. She pushed the folder back across the table. "I don't need that. I remember the face." She stood up and she walked out of the family consultation room, and she went back to the nurse's station, and at 7 o'clock exactly, she clocked out. She went home, showered, changed, and was back in her car by 7:42. The Rittenhouse Hotel was the kind of place that understood discretion as an aesthetic principle. The lobby was the kind of lobby you moved through without drawing attention, which was, for Vala, the highest possible recommendation for any space. She walked in at 7:58, wearing dark slacks and a coat she had not worn since the previous winter, her hair down instead of pulled back, the elastic band in her pocket and not on her head. She walked to the restaurant entrance and gave the host a name, not her name, a reservation she had called in from the car, a name she had used before and that still existed cleanly in whatever systems mattered. She was seated at a table with a clear sightline to the room's other occupied tables. Elena Marsh was at a corner table, alone. Newspapers and a coffee, the posture of a woman who was not waiting for anyone and not concerned about being watched. She was older than the photograph, not dramatically, but in the specific way that the most controlled people age, in fine increments, the discipline extending even to that. Vala ordered coffee. She sat. She looked at Elena Marsh with the careful peripheral attention of someone who was not looking at her. She was measuring. Marsh was calm, completely, organically calm. Not the performed calm of someone managing anxiety, but the actual calm of someone who believed, at a fundamental level, that the world was arranged in her favor, and that this morning was no exception. She turned a page of her newspaper. She lifted her coffee cup. She set it down. She had no idea that 4 of the men she had helped fund were in federal custody 4 miles away. Or she did know, and the calm was not organic, but professional. And Vala was about to find out which. Vala stood up. She crossed the room with the unhurried, confident movement of someone who belongs wherever they are standing, and she pulled out the chair across from Elena Marsh and sat down. Marsh looked up. Her eyes were gray and quick, and they took Vala in with the speed of someone whose first instinct in every new situation was assessment. She did not recoil. She did not reach for a phone or signal to anyone. She simply looked, completed the assessment, and said, "I don't believe we have a reservation together." "We don't," Vala said, "but we have a conversation." Marsh set her newspaper down. She placed both hands on the table in a gesture that managed to be simultaneously open and controlled. "I'm not sure what gives you the impression that I'm available for an unscheduled conversation with a stranger." "Sovereign Heights Medical Center," Vala said. "Last night, room 804. Not a flicker, not a blink, not a single visible response in Marsh's face. Vala had expected that. What she watched for instead was the hands, the slight involuntary pressure of fingertips against the tablecloth, the micro adjustment of weight. And there it was, barely visible, but there. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," Marsh said. "I think you are," Vala said. "I think you've been in this city for 4 days overseeing an operation that failed last night, and I think you're sitting here this morning doing the calculation of whether what failed constitutes a problem you need to solve before your 2 o'clock flight, or a problem you can leave behind and manage from a distance." Marsh looked at her for a long moment. Then she lifted her coffee cup and drank from it with complete steadiness. She set it down. "You're very direct," she said, "for someone whose name I don't know. You can call me Vala." A pause. Something moved behind Marsh's gray eyes. Not recognition exactly, more like the sensation of a word you almost remember. The tip of the tongue feeling of a name that should mean something, but won't quite surface. "Vala," she repeated. "The nurse," Vala said, "from the 7th floor." The hands on the tablecloth tightened. There it was. "I'd like you to leave my table," Marsh said. Her voice was still controlled, but the temperature in it had dropped by several degrees, and the quality of her stillness had changed from the stillness of someone at ease to the stillness of someone deciding. "I will," Vala said, "in a minute. I wanted to ask you something first." "You're not in a position to ask me anything." "Marcus Hale is going to be arrested within the next 72 hours, Vala said. Not loud, conversational, the tone of someone describing the weather. The audio evidence alone is sufficient for a federal indictment. The physical evidence from last night adds RICO predicates. The 4 men in custody are already talking to prosecutors because that's what people do when they're looking at federal time and someone offers them a different option. She paused. "You've been careful, 11 years of careful, but the architecture of what you built leaves traces, and the people who know how to read those traces have been reading them for a long time." Marsh said nothing. "You have a 2 o'clock flight," Vala said. "I know the airline and I know the seat. There are 2 federal agents at this hotel right now who don't have enough yet to stop you from taking that flight." She looked at her steadily. "But they will have enough by tonight. And tomorrow you'll be in a different kind of room than this one. The restaurant around them continued its morning business. The clink of silverware, the low murmur of other conversations, a child at a table near the entrance asking for orange juice. Life proceeding at its ordinary pace around a table where two women were engaged in something that had nothing ordinary about it. Marsh turned her coffee cup in a slow circle on its saucer. Her eyes never left Vala's face. "What do you want?" she said. "I want you to tell me about the senators," Vala said. Marsh went very still. "Not Hale's operations, not the money movements. I know about those. I want the names of the senators, the specific arrangement, how it was set up, when, through which instruments." She paused. "Those two names are the piece that turns a significant federal prosecution into a case that reshapes the next decade of American political life." Marsh stared at her. "You're not FBI," she said. "No." "You're not DOJ." "No." "Then who?" "I told you," Vala said. "I'm the nurse from the 7th floor." Marsh looked at her for a long moment. In that moment, Vala could see the calculation happening in real time, could see the variable being turned over and examined from every angle, the way a person with Marsh's intelligence could not help but turn things over. And she could see the specific point at which the calculation reached its conclusion. Because Marsh's shoulders dropped a fraction of a degree and the energy around her changed, the way the energy around a very tightly wound mechanism changes when it finally releases. "Gerald Poe," Marsh said, "and Frank Abelard." She said the names quietly, almost conversationally, the way you say something that you have been carrying for a long time and have decided, for reasons even you don't fully understand in the moment, to set down. The arrangement was established through a charitable foundation in Maryland in 2019. Quarterly payments structured as speaking fees for events that never occurred. I have the account numbers, the transfer records, and 3 years of correspondence that they were stupid enough to put in writing. Vala said nothing. She let the silence do its work. "I want immunity," Marsh said. "That's not my department." "Then get me someone whose department it is." Marsh's voice was still controlled, but the controlled quality was now doing a different job. Not projecting authority, but containing something that was closer to fear than anything Vala had seen on her face in the last 10 minutes. "I want full immunity and witness protection, and I want it in writing before I say anything else. And I want it today, because Marcus Hale has people who are not the 4 idiots from last night, and if he finds out that operation failed before I'm somewhere he can't reach me, this conversation will be the last one I have." Vala reached into her coat pocket and placed a phone on the table. It was not her phone. It was the phone the man in the gray suit had given her in the parking garage 40 minutes ago, already dialed to a number, already ringing. She slid it across the tablecloth. Marsh looked at it. "That's someone whose department it is," Vala said. Marsh picked up the phone. She held it to her ear. She listened for 3 seconds, and then her face changed. Not dramatically, not in the visible theatrical way of film, but in the quiet molecular way of a person who has just heard something that confirms a decision they have already half made. She said, "Yes, this is Elena Marsh. I want to talk to someone about a cooperation agreement." A pause. "Today, within the hour." Another pause. "Yes, I understand. I'll stay here." She lowered the phone from her ear. She held it in her hand for a moment and then set it on the table between them. The newspaper, the coffee, the ordinary morning light, all of it the same as it had been 20 minutes ago, and none of it the same. Marsh looked at Vala. "You came in here alone," she said. "No backup visible, no badge, no weapon, nothing. You sat down across from me, and you talked me into that phone call with nothing but words and the look on your face." She paused. "Who trained you?" "Good people," Vala said. She stood up. "Vala," Marsh's voice was not warm, exactly, but it had shed its earlier temperature. It was simply direct. "Last night, those men, you were the one." "I was on shift," Vala said. All four of them. I had a busy night. Marsh looked at her with an expression that was not quite admiration and not quite fear, and settled somewhere between the two into a kind of clear-eyed recognition, one professional to another, stripped of any pretense. I've worked with a lot of very dangerous people, she said quietly, in 11 years, people whose names are in files that will never be declassified. And sitting across from you right now, she stopped, shook her head slightly. You don't look like any of them. No, Vala said. I don't. She buttoned her coat. She picked up her own coffee, which she had not touched, and she set $40 on the table. Someone will be here in 15 minutes, she said. Don't leave. She walked out of the restaurant. In the lobby, she kept walking, through the revolving door, out into the Philadelphia morning, cold and washed clean by last night's storm. The sky, the particular pale gray of a city that has been rained on and is deciding whether to be blue. She walked half a block and stopped and took one breath, and then another. And in those two breaths, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the last 9 hours. Every decision and every impact and every moment in which the distance between the right outcome and the wrong one had been razor thin. And then she folded that weight into the same interior place where she put everything she needed to carry but did not need to display. And she walked to her car. Her phone buzzed. Reyes, she answered. Voss, Reyes said. The single word carried everything. The investigation, the confirmation, the complicated grief of someone who has just discovered that a person she worked with was not who she thought. I'm sorry, Vala said. He'd been passing information for 8 months, since Gage was first identified as a potential witness. A pause. 8 months. He was sitting 4 feet from that door every night and he was... She stopped. We found it in his call records, 3 calls to a number we've been tracking for 2 years. The last one was made at 11:03 last night, 20 minutes before the power went out. 11:03. Vala had been in Mr. Kowalski's room adjusting his drip at 11:03, feeling the prickle at the base of her neck. He's in custody, Reyes said. He's cooperating, because apparently when everything falls apart all at once, people cooperate. Another pause. Marsh? Someone will be bringing her in within the hour, Vala said. She'll have names, Poe and Abelard. Silence on the line. Senator Poe, Reyes said, as if testing whether the name could exist in the sentence she was placing it in. And Abelard, Vala said. The silence stretched a full 4 seconds. Then, Ms. Rice, I don't know exactly what you are, and I suspect I'm not supposed to know, but I want you to understand something. Her voice had the quality of a person saying something they mean completely, without professional calibration, without the filter of the job. What you did last night, and this morning, I've been in federal law enforcement for 14 years, and I have never seen anything like it. Not the physical part. Anyone can be trained to fight. I mean she searched for the word, the steadiness, the way you just kept going. Every time the situation escalated, you just kept going. Vala sat in her car. The morning light came through the windshield. The city moved around her. It's the job, she said. It's more than the job, Reyes said. She didn't argue with that. They ended the call. She sat for a moment longer. She thought about Torrin Gage, who was in a secured room somewhere in this city, being debriefed and medicated and kept alive for the 11 days between now and the trial that would determine whether the 11 years of Marcus Hale's operation had finally come to an end. She thought about Mara, who still thought her father was in Arizona, and who would, perhaps, be able to one day know the truth about where he had been and what he had survived, and who had been on the floor the night everything nearly ended. Perhaps not. The world did not always give people that. She thought about Howard Briggs, who had slept through the power coming back on. She thought about Mr. Kowalski and his French toast. She thought about Darla's hand on her shoulder for 3 seconds in the orange emergency light. She thought about the man in the gray suit and the second page in the folder, and the new assignment waiting for her. She started the car. She had 9 hours before she needed to be back at Sovereign Heights for her next shift. 9 hours to sleep, to eat, to read the full brief that was already waiting in a secure file on the matte black device in her left pocket, to prepare herself for whatever came next in the quiet, methodical, unspectacular way she prepared herself for everything, without drama, without announcement, in the privacy of a life that nobody around her fully saw. That was the thing about Vala Rice. She had been invisible on purpose. She had built that invisibility carefully, deliberately, over years and distance and sacrifices that had no ceremony attached to them. She had learned that the most important work is almost never the work that gets seen, and the most dangerous people are almost never the people who look dangerous. And the most significant moments are almost never the moments anyone is watching for. Last night, for 1 hour in a darkened hospital on the 7th floor of Sovereign Heights Medical Center, all of that had been tested in the most direct possible way. And the test had come back with an answer that she already knew, but that the world had now confirmed in the clearest possible terms. She drove. The city moved around her. Ordinary, living, the specific and irreplaceable texture of people going about their mornings without knowing what had happened 8 hours ago on a floor above the city they inhabited, without knowing how close certain things had come to going another way, without knowing the name of the woman in the car on Walnut Street who had been the difference between those two outcomes. They didn't know. They didn't need to know. That was the job. At the next red light, she reached into her pocket and took out the elastic band. She pulled her hair back, tied it the way she always tied it. Same band, same motion, same result. The light turned green. Vala Rice drove home, and the city went about its morning, and nobody noticed her at all. That was exactly the way it was supposed to be.